first want to seat Kitty Grant, John Lennon, Bob Legnard, myself, Earl Finch, and Lou. Mono-crete, site plan special permit, crematory, 12 Trowbridge Drive.
Just for the record, Chuck Anders, our land use counsel, is here to help you in any discussion and answer any questions and potentially guide you as well.
Thanks, Steve.
Pat, before you start, Lou is seated for Steve
I'm
to
sorry,
show.
Steve, yes, or Don Brown.
Okay, thank you. Steve, you've been sitting for Steve on this.
Oh, that's right.
Okay.
And because this is a special permit application, I did include, I just handed out to you special permit criteria that's outlined in the zoning regulations. I would suggest that you pay particular attention to the criteria in going through this process and forming a potential decision.
Thank you, Steve. All right, as this is a work session, I'll turn to commission members for comments. When you're ready.
I can take that.
This is the women's sports because the, yeah.
Did you want to say anything?
No. Okay, I guess nobody wants to start, so I will. Okay, I'm going to start. I'm just going to give a brief overview of the way I see it. We started with the text amendment in April of 2014. We received a lot of material. And at the text amendment, we had more people who spoke in favor of it than we had against it. Let me see, who else was here? But one of the things that struck me the most of the people who did speak against it, a lot of their comments centered around hearses. They didn't want to see hearses in the park. I thought about that very long and hard. And I thought, you know, it's an industrial park, and we have been told by the people, and I've looked on, I've spoken to other people, that most of the time they are, that the clients will be delivered by vans. But if the park is worried about hearses, what about restaurants on Greenwood Avenue? Now, I can remember sitting on Greenwood Avenue in Jacqueline's and watching from the churches, hearses going down the street. This is a natural fact of life. We are born, we live hopefully a good life, and then we pass. And hearses are a natural fact of life. And this, I'm only revolving around the text amendment and the comments we had at that text amendment. Ms. Antolini did speak at that text
Well,
amendment.
the text amendment is not the subject of
Well, but
this.
it's all incorporated into
Yeah,
the same
that's true.
record, so I think
I
we
just
should
wanted to
address
make
it all.
sure we weren't confused
No,
about
no,
that.
no, I'm not confusing anything. We did have a lot of talk from, material from Ms. Antolini about mercury and such, and because I don't think people understand, and I know Ms. Antolini was upset with the members who did vote, and yes, you did, you spoke our names and asked us to point out to you why we did it, even though you have it on tape, and, no, I
We
realize.
shouldn't be,
I realize that, but I think I feel I need to give a whole picture. Then we started on, and I'm sorry, I did not bring all of my material, I put it aside. At that meeting, we also had materials from Matthew Pollock, who is, I believe he's the DEP, and we had material from Gary Ginsberg, who is the Connecticut Health Department. At that point, they told us that the emissions were minor, went to the fence line, by and large, most of the time, and that they didn't think there would be any significant repercussions outside of that. Then we started, and, I'll get my date, I'm sorry. We started again in 2015, and we heard a lot more information, particularly from Mr. Gross and Ms. Antolini again, on what problems could arise. We heard from other people as well. We heard a lot from Mr. Olson and everyone, and I think all of this information is here. I have gone over it more than once. I've gone over it more than twice. And a decision has to be made, and we cannot make that decision until our next meeting. And I think that's about it from here. There will be more comments because I did leave my material. Oh, and yes, and there is more, excuse me. I have been in constant talk with the DEEP, in particular to Kieran Holding. And last Friday, I spoke, yes.
I hope you're not receiving evidence outside the record. You
No,
should
I was
base your-
asking you a question.
Okay.
This
but-
was before it was closed.
Okay, it just, you need to make your decision based on the public information, the information that was submitted in the record. Obviously, if you're basing your decision
Well,
on
Mr. Ginsburg
something-
did send information in.
Oh, okay, if the information's in the record, great.
Yes, he did.
That's all I'm commenting on.
So if I had a question, I'm not allowed to call and ask?
You need to put, the database of what you decide has to be on the record. The idea is, if
So I
you're
should have
basing
written
your,
it down.
if anyone is making a decision
Oh,
based on
the
something
public
that's
hearing's
not in the
closed.
record,
Okay.
public hearing's closed,
All right, then I can't
And
get,
it's
the
unfair to
information I
either side.
received last week, I cannot submit. Too
yeah,
bad.
you can't, and you should
Alright.
base your decision based on the
Right,
information
okay.
that was presented.
Thank you for clarifying that. I was just trying to do my homework and trying to learn more. Sorry, I'm done, for now.
My concern about this specific site plan is its location. In order for it to work within our zoning regulations, the retort vents, the crematorium, if you will, has been put way up into the front corner of the property, very, very close to the road, making it highly visible. And at the time when there was an EDC with jurisdiction over this, we did also receive testimony from people discussing the possible adverse impacts on property values of the adjacent and nearby property owners, as well as the impact of something like this, particularly if it's going to be highly visible and so close to the road, on further development of the business park. And remember, they are trying to market this park as more than just an industrial park. They're also trying to appeal to businesses that would like to put offices in there and things like that. It's not simply an industrial park. So I have an issue with the location. And Kitty, one thing you said was that things like mercury would fall within the fence line. What did you mean by that?
There was I'm sorry, it was in the report we received initially, that they said most of what fell would end at the fence line.
You see how?
And that was from the Department of Health, Connecticut State Department of Health.
Do you see how close the vents are now to the
Yes.
property lines?
Yeah.
I mean, they're extremely close.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, just to address the Hearst issue, I think the difference is, as the vice president of the company, not the applicant, but the company that'll be selling and maintaining these retorts indicated, the number of cremations that can be performed in a day are far, far higher than we were led to believe by the applicant.
Well, we were told it was 7 to 7, so there's only so many hours.
But even 7 to 7, he gave us a very, very high number, and that number would be many, many multiples of what a funeral home could expect to do in a week, or frankly, in probably 4 or 5 months if it was operating at full capacity. First of all, let me just say, I have absolutely nothing against this applicant. This applicant is obviously, is just trying to take advantage of a business opportunity, which he has every right to do. And he's not looking to do anything terrible, and he's not looking to harm his neighbors. I do take umbrage to people who are directing their ire at the applicant. But we have to look at not only what is in the, whether or not an applicant should be allowed to develop their property in accordance with our rules and regulations, but what this specific development will, what kind of impact it will have on, if we go to our special permit criteria, and you look at number 3 and look at number 4. Overall neighborhood compatibility and suitable location for use. Whether proposed use will have a detrimental effect on neighboring properties and residences or the development of the district. And I would say that I'm convinced that it will. And if we want to just talk about the health impacts.
Hold on, this is not working.
Oh. Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And then number 4 is the suitable location for use. Whether the location and size of the site, the nature and intensity of the operations involved in or conducted in connection with the use, and the location of the site with respect to streets giving access to it are such that the use will be in harmony with the appropriate and orderly development in the district in which it is located and shall promote the welfare of the town. And again, looking at this site plan and looking at its location, I do think that it will not be in harmony with the development of the district. And the way I look at it is, I just simply put like a cost-benefit analysis for this whole thing. And I look at the benefit and by the way, only from the town's perspective, not from the applicant's perspective. And I look at all of these things, and I can't help but come to the conclusion that the risk of harm to the town in terms of developing these properties, additional properties, and increasing taxes and increasing employees that can be shopping in Bethel and tax revenues, and the possibility of scaring away taxpayers who are currently there, who are paying a significant amount of money in property taxes to our town. versus the benefit to the town of allowing this, which I find de minimis.
You're basing that on the location then?
I'm basing this all on the location.
Yeah.
I'm basing on the impact of this being so close to the road. I'm just looking at the site plan, I'm not looking at the overall impact. And I wonder, when we talk about the health issues, which I do think is important, and I do know that we have received massive amounts of data. In fact, some of the data we received, both sides have argued pretty persuasively for and against, using the exact same study, that there is a lot of issues with respect to the crematorium, and particularly now given its location. We're not talking about it being in the center of the property. We're talking about it being right up, practically, against a neighboring piece of property and pretty darn close to the road. So, for those reasons, I don't feel that this application has met the criteria for a special permit in this particular location.
I have felt that it didn't fit the third reason of overall neighborhood compatibility from the beginning of the initial attempt to do a text amendment. And I stated my reasons before, and they're fairly much the same, and I'm more or less in accordance with Lou's reasons. I do believe that had the public become more involved earlier on, that there might have been a lot more reaction and interaction with the commission, and that is what it is. But we are here now considering what we're considering with miles and miles of testimony and hours of volunteer sitting, listening, and my feeling is still the same, that it does not satisfy, first of all, number 3, and number 4 is a reasonable argument as well.
Thank you, Earl. John?
I don't have any comments tonight, thanks, Pat.
Bob?
I voted to put a text amendment in to allow crematoriums in Clark Park. I think the plans before us for a crematorium in that location meet our special permit criteria. Overall neighborhood compatibility and suitable location for use is mere conjecture by certain people that it's going to affect economically. We have no proof. I've gone over the material. This is it right here. I've read several of those several times. I make this decision based on the site plan and the location and the compatibility of this. I think it's a good plan. I think we have no guarantees anytime someone locates in the park one way or the other. If they're going to stay, we thought we had a gem in Cannondale. They picked up and left. So you can't make the determination on the conjecture of certain people that this isn't going to work there. I think it meets our regulations. They've created a site plan of things that came before us during the public hearing, changed the plan several times to meet any and all things that were even conceived to be wrong with the plan. So at this point, that's all I have to say.
My comments pretty much follow what Lou said. He covered a lot, which is overall neighborhood compatibility. And that became a concern to me, especially talking about the economic impact to Bethel and to the business park. That was a big concern. And when you have 8 businesses come forward and indicate they may leave the park, I have to really listen to that. Whether it's in letters, whether it's in comments sitting right here in the room. That's not a risk I'm willing to take, because we are trying to develop the end of Trowbridge, open that up. And I'm concerned that we're not going to get people coming into the park. And then when we look at a brand-new business coming in and immediately putting his building back on the market, that's a huge concern to me. That's a major impact to the town, and as Lou said, if, say, these businesses began to leave the park, that's a concern to me, how that impacts our grand list, our taxes, our mill rate, and it's not a risk that I'm willing to take, and when you look at where this is now located on the site, Lou's right, it's highly visible, and the vents are too close to the property line. And again, that is a problem for me. Based on, pretty much everyone has made their comments. But we're missing one of our commissioners.
We're going to table it.
And we're gonna table this until September 8th,
Yes, that's when Don will be
Yes.
back.
then, because Don should be back by then.
Mm-hmm.
I will be unable to make
Okay,
it.
okay.
Yeah, we'll listen to the tape and,
And then what, further discussion if we want it? That'll be that.
Yeah, again, the recommendation is you don't vote at the meeting, but you give some direction at that meeting.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
So
absolutely.
that we'll prepare a written
Right.
resolution based on your comments.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
I'm sorry that we don't vote on the next meeting.
You don't vote at the next
No.
meeting. I
No,
think this
that's
is,
Do what
They
we
build a
usually do,
consensus.
and then
Yeah,
ask
build a
for
I
consensus.
understand.
consensus and then ask for a resolution.
this is one where I think you need a written resolution
No, I appreciate it.
to make sure it's all tied up.
Right.
I think sometimes, the one thing I would say is, sometimes when we look at these things, we have to ask ourselves, to whom should who should bear the burden on something like this, particularly something new or controversial? And I think and I think then it does. I mean, I'm looking to the applicant, and I'm looking to the information that he can bring to us, so that the applicant can meet my concerns.
Mhm.
I was not overly impressed with the real estate testimony, and not in any way, shape, or form. I thought that was a weakness. But I think the most important thing is, throughout this awful, drawn-out process, is that we have heard from so many different people in the public. And something like this, I think, demands public input. So we know, I mean, we're here representing the public, we have to know how they feel. And, I mean, I've certainly heard them loud and clear. But even so, when I apply our criteria for a special permit to this application and this particular site plan, I can't vote for it.
I understand.
Despite, and that's trying to put aside for a minute everything that the public said. I'm just looking at our regulations.
So Lou, we have to be very careful. We have a book of regulations that say if it fits the regulations, then we approve it. So we have to be very careful on that emotions don't get involved and decisions are made because of emotion.
You're 100% right, and
They
that's what I
have
tried to,
That's
that's what I just
exactly
tried to
right.
distinguish, John. You're absolutely right about
That is
that.
something we really have to keep separate. I mean,
Right.
this thing where 8 people might be leaving the park, I'm sorry, I cannot consider that. I really can't, because.
And nor should
We're sup-
we
no,
as
nor should we.
a zoning
Because we
board.
should be going by rules and regulations, and the public input on their level is very important. But, to tell us that, well, if you do this, we're gonna leave.
Right, the reason the public comes in, they give us information.
Oh,
The
and good
applicant then
information.
goes back at that
And we did get a lot of good
And we
information.
decide which person had better testimony and what to believe, okay? That's,
In part, yes,
Yeah.
but ultimately, it all has to comply with our.
Right, I know.
Well,
They're
no,
already-
this is not a site plan.
Well, the
So
spe-
let me just explain a little bit because it's really important. Site plan is really not discretionary. A special permit is discretionary. And a special permit does have criteria that you guys can look to in determining whether or not that use is appropriate for the location that you're considering. So there is discretion in this, and it has to do with physical location, economics, it has to do with health and welfare, safety of the public. So those are all things that are under your jurisdiction to consider in making your decision.
And that's why we take the testimony from everybody and then, you know, come up with a reasonable.
Absolutely. But I just wanted to clarify that it's not just,
It's a
it meets
special
the,
permit,
it meets
right.
the
It
rules
does-
in
Well, no,
the,
I get it.
I- no,
The
it's just
special
important-
permit
it's
is
just
on top
important
of the
to
site,
say.
right?
but I just one other thing to bring up, to Lou's point, and it's in here. The burden is technically in our regulations on the applicant to demonstrate that the applicable special permit criteria are addressed. So that's section 8.5.C.5. So it's actually stated in there that it's their responsibility. So it's not just a theory that it should be, but it's actually stated that it's a requirement.
Well, that is always, I think the burden.
No, I know that, I'm
To Lou's
just
point,
saying,
right.
yeah, it's just more to Lou's point, I just wanted to,
Right.
because it's really important that that be stated for the record.
Good. Okay,
Right,
so we're gonna table this until the 8th.
September 8th.
September
Okay.
8th?
Right.
See you on the 8th.